You're listening to Feathers, a podcast of stories of women walking in faith. I hope these stories inspire you and encourage you to take flight in your own faith. I'm your host, Amy Bennett, and this is Season 8, Episode 8. Feathers is an outreach of Abiding Ministries. Find more encouragement at abidingministries.net. Well, hey, friend, and welcome to Feathers this week. I am so happy to have you here. It is such a joy to do this podcast and to meet you here this week. We have such a consistent following, and I'm just so thankful that you show up to hear these stories, and hopefully they encourage you each week. This week, I'm excited to have somebody that actually found the podcast through another guest, Elizabeth Maxon, and began to listen to each show, and then decided that she wanted to reach out and ask if she could share her story on the podcast. And absolutely, I said yes. It was just so intriguing. And even after we talked, I was just amazed at her story. I don't think I even understood the depths of everything she had gone through when we first started talking. So I don't know if I sound maybe a little surprised or shocked during this conversation, but it's just amazing what she has been through. I think I encouraged her at the end to even put it in a book. It's just so amazing what she has been through, and the faith that she has and the courage that she has. And I know it's going to inspire you today. So let's go ahead and get to my conversation with Monika Marshall. Hey, Monika, welcome to Feathers today.
Oh, hey, Amy. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you today and get to know you a little bit. How about you introduce yourself, your family, and what keeps you busy these days?
Definitely. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for what you're doing. You created this amazing platform for God to show everyone how He redeems people's stories. And I think that's something that everyone needs to hear on a daily basis. So I really, really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
A little bit about myself. I came to America when I was about 21 years old. Actually, I was exactly 21 years old. I left Poland 3 days after my birthday. And initially, I was going to come here just for a couple months, but God had a different plan. So I'm here 15 years later, still here, or 16 this year. I'm a mama of two little boys, 1 and 3. And I'm a wife to a really, really amazing man who I just call Saint, just because he puts up with a lot of craziness around. And daily, we just try to do what God tells us to do, which isn't always easy. My husband runs a business. We have our homeschooled boys at home, and we are trying to just be boots on the ground. So whatever God tells us to do on Monday, we do on Monday, and we do that every single day. It's fun.
Yes. Well, that is what we want to hear. Everybody living a life like that. I mean, that's really our goal through this podcast. So that's incredible to hear. And I'm excited to share more of your story today. So first I want to say, you reached out to me. You had found the podcast actually through a mutual friend, Elizabeth Maxon, that we've had on the podcast before. So tell me a little bit more about how you know Elizabeth.
Elizabeth and I met when New Charlotte Church was beginning. She was in a children ministry, and I spent, I would say, probably about a week nonstop with her, trying to put furniture together and come up with some fun things for the kids. And I think God just brought us together because He knew that I needed a spiritual mentor so badly at that time, and that's what Elizabeth was for me for the longest time. And even today, I just look up to her so much. She's a very incredible lady.
Yes, I love Elizabeth. I was actually at the beach this weekend as we're recording. I was at the beach this weekend with the girl that introduced me to Elizabeth. And then we have another mutual friend that now lives in Clemson with Elizabeth, and she's friends with her now. So we all get to share the Elizabeth love. We love Elizabeth.
Oh, and I bet she loves all of us too. She has a lot of love.
Yes. Okay. So I really want to jump into your story. You mentioned coming from Poland right after your 21st birthday. And I know that you ended up actually in the hands of human traffickers and ended up being able to escape. So I would love, if you don't mind, share a little bit about how how you ended up having plans to come to America, what kind of went wrong, and then how you got out of that situation. It's just really incredible.
Definitely. So it's actually a story I don't share often. I don't know why, but it's just a story I kind of keep close to my heart because there are so many human trafficking victims that have it much worse than I did. But I think I probably should share it more so people know that there is a way to escape. And that's something I would like them to take it out of what I'm going to say. So initially I came here with a scholarship. I was going to go to school, and there was a little program where I was going to work for a couple months. It was all through my university, and it was just going to be a great year. I was just going to have fun. And unfortunately, when I was picked up at the Greyhound station in Florida, I noticed that there were a couple of us, couple girls, couple boys, and the people that picked us up were acting a little weird. They just spoke Russian only, and they kind of shoved us into their little minivan. And this is when I realized that something was not right. Fortunately, I could understand Russian enough to understand what they were saying, and what they were saying was pretty much describing each one of us and saying what their plans were for all of us. So some of us were going to be sold and were untouchable to them that day, and I was one of them. Some of us were going to be broken into their program. It's their words that they used. And, at that point, I started thinking, God, that's not why you brought me here. Like, you did not bring me here to sell me, did you? Like, there must be something different. And just very silently on the ride to the house where they ultimately brought us into, I prayed, God, just put your hands on my shoulders and just deliver me out of here. Like, we are going. This isn't for me, and you know that. When we got to that little house, it was literally a very little house with maybe 4 or 5 bedrooms. We were put in different rooms, and the room where they put me in had bunk beds. There were 3 beds on top of each other, and there were 4 sets of those beds. So 12 little beds for girls like us. And there were a couple other girls already sitting there. You can see that that they've seen things that no one should have to see when you looked at them. And I just tried to encourage them. I tried to say, come on, let's just get out. What are they going to do? I didn't see any guns. And they tried to tell me, they will hurt our family. And I'm like, they don't know our families. Just nothing made sense. And I don't know what it was, but I just knew I needed to be out of this house. And I prayed again, God, your hands on my shoulders, let's go. And I found a window of opportunity, which is really awful. But they were busy taking other girls to other rooms to break them, as they said. And while they were so busy with it, I was able to just walk out and then run for my life. Oh gosh, it was awful. But I remember it was a little neighborhood. I found someone's crawl space. I crawled into it, and I just stayed there for the remaining of the day and most of the night. And I remember seeing them walking and hearing them speak and trying to look for me. But I just stayed there, and I just prayed and prayed. And from there, it's a really funny story, but I actually went to a gas station, which was about 500 feet from the house I was staying under, except it took me about 2 hours to get there. I got lost in a little tiny neighborhood. But when I got there, all I asked was for a taxi. And I remember the man looked at me and said, "You mean cab?" And I was like, "Oh, taxi." I just stood there with the English-Polish dictionary. I did not speak English at that time, so whatever they said went. And I remember praying, saying, "Okay, God, you get me out of it. Now bring an angel, because I don't know what to do. I'm here alone." And the taxi driver showed up, and he showed up behind me, and he was a man of Indian descent. He was wearing a very, very long white cloth. And I just looked at him thinking like, God, you have a sense of humor. He seriously looks like an angel. And I just wanted to look for wings. But it was just a moment where I thought, you know what, God, you delivered me out of here. So now show me what was this for? Because that's not an entry into America I thought I would have. So yes, maybe my story isn't dramatic or traumatic as others, but I can tell you that a few years later, I was able to go back into that place and help rescue some of the people that were still there. Some of the girls that were still there were the ones that came on a plane with me. And,
oh my gosh.
Just seeing what happened to them, seeing what they were put through, changed me forever. It's just unbelievable that there is so much evil in this world. And at the same time, I can tell you that I found out that one of the girls that for some reason I really felt like should run away with me, I even pulled her by her hand, actually did not make it. She went missing, as they called it in those circles. So some really scary stuff that happened in this world. But since then, I think a lot about that situation, and I ask God, what is it for? Should I be working with human trafficked women? But then, do I really relate? Because I didn't go through everything that they go through, or should I maybe just advocate and teach women that they have a choice, that they can run away, that God will be there with them? Or should I help women that escape, work and figure out how to restore their souls? Because God can do that. Just a piece of my story that is still a big puzzle for me, still a big question.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I have so many, so many questions about that. First of all, I want to ask, so you said you came over with your university. These people that picked you up, did they just intercept the people that were actually supposed to pick you up, or was the entire trip kind of a sham?
So they actually had a company. They had a cleaning business. And they had a business where in hotels in Destin, Florida, they would place some hostesses and cleaning people just for like a work visa, 3 months type of a thing. So they worked with universities, bringing people in, except they chose very carefully, and they chose a couple people that would really work so they could send pictures and show, look, we have this great program. And then the rest were the people that were either sold or
gotcha.
Just used throughout the times.
Gotcha. Wow. You have to be so careful. I mean, and how would you know? You wouldn't know. Oh my goodness. So, so I'm wondering, you talked about being able to escape and get to this taxi. I mean, you don't have to tell me like years what happened, but I'm just wondering, like, how do you go from, I mean, clearly you have a well-established life here in America now. Was there an agency that you went to? I mean, how in the world did you go back to Poland at that time after you escaped? What did that look like in the next few months?
It was actually, when I look back, it's actually funny how I did it. I just decided that if God delivered me out of human trafficking, God must have this great plan, and He already laid out the path for me. So I just need to go in and do it. So I never questioned anything that I was about to do. I actually looked for an apartment. I looked for a place, and I was able to find in a newspaper a little room for rent. And when I walked in, I just said room. And I know now, because I speak English, that they told me that it was already rented. But because I didn't speak English and because I thought God wanted me to be there, I just started unpacking my suitcase. And I did it with the next job and the following job. So for a while, I don't want to say I was cocky in a ways how I did it, but I was just confident that God had a plan and I just needed to step in and do. So I worked for government for a little bit on a contract, and then that was in Florida. After Hurricane Ivan, believe it or not, in 2004, I became homeless. And this was the time when I realized, God may have this great plan for you, but the way you've been going was all about you. You found a place, you got it. You found a job, you got it. Now he's going to humble you. He will put you on the streets so you can sort of calm down and start relying on him a little more, not just believing that those ways are right. So that's kind of what I did for a little bit, just let God lead. And I found another job in Savannah, Georgia, then was moved to Charlotte with that job. It was within Wachovia. And kind of went from there, just in a much more humble way. So I had 2 years of being on fire and almost cocky to now 14 years of living a much more humble life and just following his path.
Okay, so I just have to say I work for Wells Fargo, which is Wachovia. So we probably worked for the same company for a couple of years there.
Definitely.
Wow, isn't it a small world? That's so funny. It's the company's just so large, you don't even know who you work with.
No, not even on your floor when you walk into your floor.
Right. Yeah, that's the interesting thing about working for a large company is you don't know everybody. Oh my goodness. Well, that is just incredible for you to have survived that. I actually just went to a information meeting that was held at my church about human trafficking and just awareness of what is going on. And I think we have ideas of what that looks like, but it was exactly kind of what you are describing, where it's, a promise of a job or something like that. And then it turns into something entirely different.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's the same question a lot of us are asking right now is like, what part do I play in helping these women? And I think there are so many parts to play. But you definitely, of course, have been touched personally by that. I'm so thankful, that you were able to escape. That's just incredible. So it sounds like that you were established in your faith, as before you came to America. Tell me a little bit about your faith. Were you raised in a Christian home?
Oh no, not at all. I actually had a very interesting childhood. My grandparents were quite devotedly Catholics, but if you know anything about Catholicism, it's more about going to church and following the religion than just being in love with Jesus and following him. And then my parents were total opposite. I don't think I remember them going to church more than maybe twice in their lifetime. And that was probably my brother's baptism and maybe my communion. But my parents were very, very troubled people. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom I don't know how to describe it, but my mom had a very, very troubled, life and soul. So I grew up listening to them fighting and being abused by my dad, often closed in a little basement just to kind of be put away. So they didn't have to deal with me, as they called it often. And I actually found Jesus when I was years old. I somehow stumbled across a little Bible. It was one of those little tiny New Testament white leather Bibles. And I started reading it while in that basement. I was a very, very early reader. And I remember feeling like I wasn't alone. And I carried that feeling for so long, just thinking, you know what, maybe my parents are not there for me, but Jesus is. Like, look what he did. And when I sit in the dark room, I always feel like he's there. So I didn't understand what giving life to Christ was then, and I didn't understand it for at least 20 more years. But at that point, I decided that I wanted to know that guy Jesus, whoever he was in that little book I read.
Oh my goodness. So did you have somebody come alongside you like before you came to America, or is that something that you because obviously if you're praying that you know that God is with you, you have this general idea that God is with you. So did you understand the gospel before you left Poland?
Not at all. Not at all. I was taught some of the stories from the New or Old Testament by the nuns in my school or in my church, but I still did not understand it. And, I think that's the problem that a lot of people in this world have these days. They know of Bible, they know of Jesus, they know all the stories, but they don't have a personal relationship. And that just has to either happen through something very traumatic, or they have to be introduced to it by someone in their circles. And for me, it actually did not happen until I was about 26 years old. So 5 years after I came to America, I worked, I think it was 25. I worked for Wachovia, and there were 4 ladies. I tell you, they annoyed me so badly because every single day, all I heard was, I'm praying for you. We are praying for you. You should come to church with us. And I was like, I know God. What else are you praying for me? Like, what else do you want from me? Until it clicked. And it clicked because I started seeing that they didn't just pray, they didn't just know the stories, they actually shined this incredible selfless light and that unconditional love for me, who was just nobody to them. I was just a coworker. And that was the feeling that I wanted to understand more. And that's when I started going to church in a different way. It wasn't just stand up, sit down, and say a prayer in a Catholic church. I actually ended up going by total incident to a local church here in Charlotte called Forest Hill, and noticing that gospel is much more than religion. So I really want to thank those 4 ladies, and I take them in my prayers every single day for showing me what Jesus' love really is, and that it's not just a religion and a prayer that you say in church once a week.
Well, that is so powerful. As somebody who actually, works in the same really environment that you worked in, for them to be able to say that to you and be open with their faith, that's not something that happens very often.
No, I
in the corporate world.
No, I almost felt trapped by them. The way my cubicle was positioned, no matter what way I went, I had to stumble across at least one of them. And it was like, enough. But, God works in really funny ways. For me, it took 4 ladies that actually had to be in my face Monday through Friday, 5 times a day. But they were brave. They were brave because that culture is not of Jesus supporters. So I'm thankful for them.
I think there's a lot of, the way I see it, there are a lot of Christians in the corporate world. It's just, it's not an open environment to talk about it.
No,
really. And it's really, is it, we have a job to do, right? So, yeah. It's not like there's a place for it that seems appropriate all the time. But I love that they use that relationship with you to be able to, they saw something clearly in you. And that's just amazing. Anyway, so my goodness, Monika, you have such an interesting story. So I know part of your story too is that you actually left the bank to do ministry. So talk about you have a gift, you say, of you call it serendipity, of being able to see God's work in people's lives. So tell me a little bit more about what that is and what prompted you to actually leave the corporate world.
Definitely. So actually, I'll go back a little bit. I wanted to start a nonprofit for a couple years. I knew God put it on my heart, and He said very clearly, you are going to run a nonprofit. And I just had all these ideas. I was going to have an app, and I was going to have this website, and there were a lot of I's for a little bit. I this and I that, and nothing was working. No one was jumping on board, and it was just awful. And then I found out that someone released the app that I was designing, exactly what I wanted.
Oh, don't you hate that? Oh, I always have ideas. I'm like, oh yeah, that already exists.
So it was last year. It was right after my little boy was born. So it was end of March. He was about 3 weeks old when I just sat on the couch and I was like, God, enough. Like, I can't do it anymore. I'm trying to listen, and I think I hear you, but then I don't know what you want me to do. What do you want me to do? And, He just said very clearly, He said, I want you to speak. I want you to take some time off, be a mom, and kind of put your thoughts together. I will bring you back on a narrower path. And I also want you to pray that I show you way. And I was like, you want me to go on pause? I've never paused, God. So that was really troubling. But it's funny because when he said, I want you to speak, I actually started praying out loud in Polish, which to my husband appeared like I was possessed for a moment. But I was like, I'm speaking to you every day, and I'll speak Polish if that works better, which really didn't. I just threw a little tantrum, which we all throw a tantrum in front of God. I know that, so no shame there. But I did take that time. I just prayed for a couple things. I prayed that God will break my heart for what breaks his. I just prayed that prayer every day, multiple times. Then I prayed for divine appointments with people that are here with similar mission or that could point me in a direction where I need to be going. And then I prayed for peace and for understanding of his plan, because I knew that I move really fast and God was going to make it happen slower. So I needed that patience. And, day by day, I started noticing little things happening and just seeing how God was changing my life, was changing me, was showing me things that I didn't notice about myself, about my life, about him in my life, until in July, it was time for me to go back to work from maternity leave. And I prayed and he said, you're really going back? And I was like, I guess not, God. So, of course, I had a checklist. I was like, God, I will not go back. If these 5 things happen, hold my hand through it. And I think he was just rolling his eyes at me and was like, you know what? Okay, let's just get them happen in a week. Things that seemed impossible to me. And I would love to talk about it one day with you. But he just made things happen and I had no choice anymore. And at that point, I also understood what he said when he said, you need to go back to who you are. You need to realize that you've been doing it for a while. And that's when I realized that I've been running a nonprofit my whole life. I've always had this gift of what I call serendipity. I know people use it in a non-godly way, the word, but to me, serendipity means that it's just a development of events by God, designed very carefully by God, that lead us to something beneficial or deliver us in some beautiful place. And I think often we forget to see God in what's happening in our lives. I try to look at it as of me, myself, and I doesn't exist. And if I put word God there, what do I see? And then I've noticed that I see it about people. I can talk to you for a second and you talk about something that happened in your life, and immediately I see this whole beautiful story and a whole beautiful path that God placed you in. Sometimes things that you haven't even paid attention to or noticed. So while thinking about that, I started also thinking about what God makes me do every day. And every day I show people how to serve. I show people how to find ways to serve. And from that, I understood that, oh my goodness, you already planted it in me. You already gave me all the spiritual gifts and talents to move forward. And I missed that point my whole life. So it was actually around Christmas where, as always, all my friends, neighbors, people that don't even know me would call me and say, hey, I want to do something good. What can I do? And I would give them all the lists. And it clicked that while doing that, while telling people, go to the shelter, go to the hospital, I give them those little things that they can do once, and it never sticks because it does not speak to them. So I started developing a program that would help people find their calling, find their passion, make them feel super compassionate about what they're about to do, because I believe that if they find what God burdened their hearts with, it will stick. They won't just be servants for a day, they'll be servants for a lifetime. And, knowing their stories and being able to see the serendipity in their lives kind of helps me narrow it down for them. So that's kind of what the nonprofit will be about. At least a portion of it will be helping people understand what they were called to do as servants of God, how to walk the walk and be boots on the ground, or however other saying you want to use. And then at the same time, I will be using social media to show people different opportunities, showcase different charities that already exist, and kind of teach people that, you know what, when you serve, God designed you in a way that serving is going to help others, but it's also going to keep rebuilding and restoring your soul. Your soul cannot be full and just bright and happy if you are not doing God's work, which is serving. That's a long description. Sorry.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So I don't know if you might have one particular story or example that you could share. I know it's kind of off the cuff, but maybe one story of somebody you've been able to kind of do that with.
Yes. So a friend of mine came to me, I would say maybe 5 years ago, and she mentioned that she wanted to do something. So I sent her to a little charity around. Then she came back again, and I sent her to, I think, hospital to do something. And this is when I realized that she needed more. So we worked a little more. We worked through her story. We worked through her spiritual gifts, her experience, her talents. And then we discovered that given her talents and given her personality and given her life story, she would probably be amazing in prison ministry. And that's something that she's still doing. 5 years later, she's quite involved in prison ministry. She's actually thinking about quitting her job and going back to school to become a chaplain or an assistant of some sort, just working with women in a prison industry, or prison ministry. I'm sorry, a little more. But that's just like one example. I've seen it happen much more often.
I think that's so, and I think that's so important that sometimes you just need somebody else to look at your life from the outside. And it seems so obvious sometimes, clearly to you that you have a gift of being able to see that vision for people's life, being able to see that. But for somebody to look at your life from the outside and say, oh, this is what makes sense. The way God made you, the experiences He's giving you, this is the direction you need to go. I think having a friend or mentor or counselor or whatever, being able to see that in somebody is so powerful.
Definitely. Someone did it for me. Those 4 ladies, they knew that I needed to be on God's path to do what I'm doing now. So yes, the outsider's perspective sometimes is everything we need, or all we need.
Yeah, incredible. Wow, goodness, I've enjoyed talking to you so much. I just wonder if there's anything, really anything, just because of your history, growing up in a family that was not faith-based and kind of going on this journey, for so long, you kind of knew of God but didn't know God. And maybe you touched on it at the beginning, but what are some things about living a life of faith and obedience? Because that's what this podcast is really about, faith and obedience. Do you think that you wish people knew about that?
One thing I want them to know is that the moment they meet Jesus, the true, loving, fatherly, this beautiful Jesus, their life will never be the same. And they will have no choice but to be obedient, because what other life would look like? It's scary to think about. So for people that are still maybe not knowing what to do or not really knowing Jesus, I want them to know that they will feel so fulfilled and so loved, and their lives will be so full that if they are considering making that step and learning more, they really should, because it's a beautiful life you have. It's not going to be easy. You will have sicknesses, you will have accidents, you will have all kinds of bad things happening, because there is Satan in this world. But God will always redeem your story and bring you somewhere where not only you will shine a light of His love, but you will also restore others and help others. It's a really beautiful life you may have.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's no other way I'd want to live.
Me neither.
I've done it the other way, living for yourself and trying to figure it out on your own, and it's not fulfilling. We think doing the things that we want to do are going to fulfill us, but it's only when we let go of that life really starts.
Exactly. And I think I want people to also think about the fact that God will bring you to Him whether you want it or not. If you are listening to this podcast, you are probably already curious in some way, and God is planting seeds. And just don't wait for Him to bring you down with some kind of awful story that you'll have to share later. Just do it before, because you will have more strength and you will have Him on your side to go through that ugliness if you stumble upon it. Just don't wait. Do it now.
Mm-hmm. So true. Well, Monika, I've so enjoyed listening to your story. I mean, honestly, it could be like a movie. You need to flesh some of this out. I would love to see this. I mean, in a book. Oh my gosh, I don't know if you've thought about doing that, but it really is.
I haven't
incredible.
Heard from so many that I should. So maybe it's God saying, "Come on, let your fingers typing."
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, we just got a taste of it today. So if people want to connect with you as you continue in this ministry, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Like I said, I'm using social media for good. So Instagram is a good venue. And I think it's just Monika Marshall, Monika with a K. I am releasing a new website, so it will be again monikamarshall.com for now. They'll be able to read some blog and see more posts and videos that I'll be putting on. But if anything else, if someone wants to get in touch with me, I would really love that. I would love to help them find their passion and see what God wants them to do. But at the same time, I want everyone to pray that prayer I went and prayed on my knees. Break your heart for what breaks His. Because that's just so powerful, and God will change your life, change your heart if you do that.
That's so powerful. All right. Thank you so much, Monika, for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And we live so close, so we will probably run into each other sooner or later.
Oh, yeah. We're going to purposely run into each other. I'm going to make sure of it.
Definitely. Well, have a good day, Amy, and thank you again.
Thank you. All right. Wasn't her story incredible? Oh, my goodness. I just, if there's one thing that I think we could take from her story and her life, really, and her journey, is just the courage and the faith that she has had, just to believe that God was with her. Like, even when she didn't know exactly what the gospel was, who Jesus was, and all of this, even as a child, just the faith that she had in God. I mean, she didn't even really know what, all the explanations, but she believed in this Jesus that she had found in the New Testament. And then how she had come to America on her own, how she escaped human traffickers. Oh my goodness, I still can't believe that. Just the courage that she had to be in that kind of situation and know to get out and believe that God was with her. That is just so incredible to me, and just how she had overcome homelessness and, moved cities for a job. It's just like even quitting her job after getting the job, then she quit it just to do the thing that she feels like God is calling her to do. It's just every step of the way, I can just see so much courage and faith in her life, and it just inspires me so much. And I just pray that we all would have that kind of faith and all would have that kind of courage, just to believe that God is with us. God's, hands are on our shoulders, and that He is with us, and He's going to guide us every step of the way. And that's just truly my heartbeat for you guys as you listen, and that you would just believe that God is with you, believe He loves you, and believe that you can do whatever God is calling you to do. And, I think she said at one point she felt a little cocky, but I think that we should be a little cocky. We have the God of the universe behind us. And I think we can just have so much confidence in that instead of doubting all the time. And I'm just preaching to myself right now, is that I think that we can move forward with so much confidence, knowing what God is calling us to do and just moving forward in that. So that is just what I am taking from my conversation with Monika. I just, after we got off the phone, I even want to just keep talking to her, because I was just like, tell me all your ways. She was just such a light and a joy to talk to. And of course, you guys, I just have to put it in here. I loved her accent. If you've been listening for a long time, I have a thing for accent. So hers was just beautiful. I know I have a little Southern twang to my voice, and so it doesn't sound like it to me, but some people tell me I do. Anyway, I am rambling. I just want to say that I loved her and I hope you enjoyed her story too. Don't you think it needs to be a book? It needs to be a book. It needs to be a movie or something. It's incredible. So thank you so much for listening. I hope it did inspire you. If you want to share it, I have this posted over on Instagram and Facebook. Would love for you to share it with somebody. Again, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week on Feathers.